Итак, сегодняшняя сессия, сегодняшний вебинар посвящен вендору SolarWinds. Это лидер на рынке решений по мониторингу и управлению инфраструктурой, является абсолютным лидером среди распространения данных решений по всему миру. То есть это глобальная большая enterprise компания, которая покрывает потребности в мониторинге не побоюсь этого слова сказать, по всем направлениям, по всем составляющим в инфраструктуре. И сегодняшняя тема данного вебинара посвящена именно специфике Secure by Design, именно построению и налаживанию, можно сказать, описанию самого процесса в этом направлении от вендора. И для этого мы позвали на данную сессию одного из главных технических специалистов в этом направлении, это Sascha Giese. Hello, Sasha. We are really glad for see and hear you today on this session, and we are really excited that you are connected to this session. And I just on the several word more, and I passed the word to you. В продолжение сессии мы рассмотрим все вопросы, которые связаны с Secure by Design, с этой концепцией от вендора в SolarWinds. Если у вас будут вопросы, мы постараемся на них детально ответить, проработать. Если будут возникать вопросы по отдельным продуктам, вы сможете в любом случае проконсультироваться после вебинара. Мы всегда рады будем открытой коммуникации и, соответственно, для того, чтобы вам предоставить больше информации, чтобы вам было интересно. Ну и кратенько про нас. То есть мы, Убрик IT, являемся официальным дистрибьютором решений SolarWinds то есть в Украине, Казахстан, Азербайджан, другие страны Ближней Азии. Вот. Ну, я, Тарас Дуброва, и мои коллеги, это непосредственно люди, которые занимаются с нашей стороны развитием бизнеса в этом направлении. Ну и дальше я передаю слово Саше. Sasha, please don't hesitate to begin your part, and this is your session, your your webinar, and we are really, I just duplicate that we are really excited to hear you on this session. So please, could you please start?
Thank you, and good morning, and thanks everybody for joining this session. So today's topic is Secure by Design, and this was amongst the only words which I understood, which has been spoken so far. And let me walk you through the steps, what happened at SolarWinds, and how we use this as a change to basically modernize software development. By the way, this is me. Sascha Giese is my name. I'm with SolarWinds since 2014, so 9 long years. And my job title is actually Head Geek. It's a funny job title. Think of like a technologist or evangelist, something like that. So the company usually sends me around and I speak at conferences, I speak to the media. If you Google my name, there's loads of publications from my side. My background is actually from network administration, but that is a long time ago. But this is not about me. Today's session is about secure software design. We have a statement here, and I don't want to read this. It's from Alex Stamos. He's the former CISO from Facebook. And the key message here is that pretty much each big company in the world has to deal with some form of attack. And we no longer talk about easy attacks, hackers who are in this for competition, who just want to be famous. No. We deal with highly organized groups who run like a company. There's like free latte macchiato, there's offices, they have unlimited resources, and it is very, very difficult to defend against such attacks. Now, if you look at what happened in the past couple of years, we obviously have a technology change, We went from 100% on-prem infrastructure to heavily distributed environments. So we look at hybrid. That's usually the way, right? Some stuff is still on-prem, and some organizations use a little bit of cloud, others use a lot of cloud, but the reality is usually hybrid. That is what most organizations run. And that comes with a little bit more, we call it attack surface, because stuff is no longer in your own four walls, obviously. Then we had the pandemic, which is old news. I think it's ongoing for 3 years now, right? The time is passing by. It required major shifts in technology inside an organization. So previously, people came to the office, and it was relatively simple to secure the environment in an office, but it is very difficult to do so when people work from home. You know, there is Wi-Fi in apartment buildings. People might use IoT devices like robot vacuums, whatever, and no one knows how secure those devices are. And every day there are new weak spots in software. So here's an example for Log4j. That is kind of, I would say, 1.5 years ago. Log4j was like a part of open source that has been used by loads of software vendors around the globe, even from us. And if there's like a 0-day problem, basically all software has to be rewritten. Ransomware is an evergreen. It is old news too, but it happens still every day. People click on something, stuff gets encrypted, and we have a big problem. So there's loads of stuff happening, and the world doesn't exactly get a safer place every day. So some of you probably know that we had a security incident at SolarWinds in end of 2020. There are various sources of information in the internet, and unfortunately, some of those aren't really true. So let me just give you a quick recap at what actually happened at SolarWinds. We used to use the traditional development chain, which means that engineers, so coders, create code, and they send it to something which is a compiler, like a build environment, that converts the handwritten code into machine-readable executables. Those executables will be stored somewhere on a web server, and customers download those. Could be a new update, it could be a full version of the software, whatever. What happened at SolarWinds is the build environment got compromised. So someone found a way into the build environment, and each time we shipped new code, malicious code got added to it. And unfortunately, it got signed by our own certificates because we didn't know. So a couple of customers downloaded updates in a certain time frame and basically got a Trojan horse on their environment. We spent a lot of time on investigating what actually happened, and the source, as far as we discovered, was a compromised email account from one of our employees. It happened more than 1 year before we actually noticed what happened. So the attackers took a long time to discover our environment, found a couple of weak spots, and attacked the build environment. They tested it for a longer time to see what they could do and what might be too risky for them to discover, and shipped those malicious code with our updates for the duration of 3 months. That was kind of between March and June 2020. By June 2020, they stopped this. So they reverted all the changes and tried to delete all their traces. By that time, we had a couple of 100 customers who downloaded those updates and basically had the Trojan horses on them. And the hackers decided which of those targets were worthy enough to further intrude their environment. Right? So that is kind of what happened at SolarWinds. Now, we looked for ways how can we prevent this from happening again. And this is obviously not a thing that happened only at SolarWinds. It happened at loads of other software vendors too. So we came up with what we call Secure by Design, which is like a completely different process in software development. And we started sharing this with other software vendors too, because we all sit in the same industry. We all sit in the same boat, and we would like to prevent this from happening again, even with competitors, for example. So here's a statement, which is a pretty nice statement. Unfortunately, it's not mine. It's from our CISO. Developers have fine-grained control over what they build, but they have zero control how they do this. Let me explain you how this works. In traditional software development, you work a lot with virtual machines to test stuff, as an example, and we did so too. The problem with a virtual machine is that when a developer uses this to test something specific and the test is finished, they usually forget about the virtual machine. That is not just a development problem, this is a general problem in IT, so everyone knows the situation. We create a VM, we do whatever we wanted to do, and then we just sit it there, right? We forget about those. And those machines are rarely monitored for security or performance, which means when an attacker accesses such a virtual machine, they have all the time in the world to use this as a jump box to discover the environment. This is a huge security risk. So we thought of what can we do here to improve this situation? And we tried a couple of different attempts. And basically what we agreed on is a system called Tecton, or Tecton Chains is actually the name. And it's a Kubernetes-based system. So we use containers. And we use a high level of automation in those containers. So whenever a developer tests a specific feature or a build and the job is finished, the container gets automatically deleted. A container will no longer be available as a full day. End of shift, everything is going to be deleted. But usually a few minutes after no input happened, the container is gone, automated. Okay, so the developers have no input anymore in changing or keeping those containers alive. This is a pretty nice system, and it's an open source. The builders behind this is a consortium based on IBM, Google, and a couple of others. And as you're probably aware, but I will talk about this in a few minutes, when you as a company use open source, you should contribute to the system, and we do this too, but more on that in a little bit. Now, this is one thing. There's another challenge when we talk about software development. The chart on top is a traditional way. We call this deterministic artifacts. Deterministic has various meanings. The way we want to use this is from a mathematical point of view. It basically means, or it describes an algorithm that uses completely defined elements and is reproducible. In traditional software development, there's a big problem, and that is the time. Even if we have the same code, but we ship it in different times to a build system, the checksum won't match because the time is always different. Makes sense, right? So what we do is we adjusted our development frameworks a tiny bit. Actually, some of them support this already, like Java, for example, and removed the time element from this different builds, which means the checksum will be always the same. That sounds like something very simple, but it's actually very difficult because the time is usually always in the file. So it took us a while to sort this out as a problem. It helps to verify the authenticity of different code snippets. It's very important. Another very important step is this one, what we see here. Now, let me explain this. We all like to do creative tasks. Tasks we enjoy, tasks where we can actually do something, we can change something, where we see results. What we usually do not like is administrative tasks, like creating documentation. The example which I usually use is in cooking. So when I'm in the kitchen, and I really enjoy cooking, cooking something might be enjoyable, but creating notes, basically creating the recipe, is a bit boring. What has that to do with software development? We ask our engineers to document each single step they do. Now, the Tecton Chains, the product which we use, supports this to a certain level. So there's automatically documentation of code changes. So whenever a line of code is changed, we can automate this, right? That is no big deal. But what about documenting? Why did the developer try to change the code? What was the intention? What is the expected outcome? So we asked our developers to document each single step. That was a bigger problem as we expected here at SolarWinds, because people don't like it, right? Meanwhile, everyone got used to it, and they do this. And they do this for a very important reason. And this is the biggest change in development. This is happening here. Now, there's a lot going on here, but let me explain you what we do. Earlier, I explained the normal development process. Remember, the developer ships code to a build server that gets converted, and then it will be an executable. What we do now is a developer creates the code, and then we have a second development team which looks at the documentation, which I just mentioned, and they recreate the code based on the documentation. And then we have a third team that verifies that both elements of codes are exactly the same. I'm going back to my analogy of cooking. When I create a dish and I create a recipe and I put the recipe somewhere in the internet and you guys follow the steps, then the result should be equally good or bad, depending on the cooking, than what I created. Okay? And the same concept is what we now apply in software development. So we have the code created twice, and we have a third team that sits completely offline in their own environment with no internet connectivity that verifies the code is exactly the same before we send it to the build environment. The build environment itself is offline too. It's no longer available from outside. And we still, in the process of the converting the context, we still verify the integrity of the code. So as you can imagine, that is quite a complex system which we use there. And it obviously has a couple of disadvantages. So developing code takes a lot longer than before because we need to make sure it's secure. It is much more expensive because we need more people to do so. But based on this system, we can guarantee that the code is authentic and that what happened here at SolarWinds will never happen again. Now, I'm not going ahead and say that there couldn't be any other problems. We are all professionals and we know there is no 100% security. But we did a lot of things here to make sure stuff like this doesn't happen again. And we are absolutely willing to share all those details. In fact, there's a couple of PDF documents available on our website who explain this in more technical details. It would be too much for these sessions, but it's all out there in the internet. And as I said, we are willing to share this. So the first people we actually shared this were our partners, around kind of a year ago on a partner event. We had our CISO coming around the globe and introduced this to our partners. We talk a lot to other software vendors, for example, to Microsoft. They use a very similar system now. And we also talk to the community, like normal users like you and me. So they are aware of what happened here and what we do to improve software development. So we use open source, and while you could potentially, as an organization, just use open source in your own software, it is not exactly the way to go. When you use open source, you should contribute to those projects. And we do so in various different ways. So we help some of those initiatives with a little bit of money. Others get hours of our development teams to improve the development of the products for free. We also help defining documentation or goals. So we are meanwhile deeply involved in some of those open source elements which we see here on the screen. And that is actually something that it's like a community thing. You take something, but then you also have to give something. The concept that SolarWinds uses here is lead by example. What we did in software development, no one else did before. This is still pretty new. It's pretty amazing, and it really helps to cover those weak spots in software development, those supply chain attacks which happened with us can happen anywhere else. And it's really important that when you use the software in your organization, that you talk to your vendors, ask them, what do you guys do to make sure your software is secure before I use them in my own environment? That is a very important question you should ask each single software vendor. Unfortunately, in many software vendors, security is more like an afterthought. It is not part of the process. And this is something which we probably continue to see. If you looked at, we are in a global recession. There's layoffs at loads of software companies, massive layoffs. You read this in the news all the time. So you can imagine that some companies probably have to compromise somewhere to make sure developing software is affordable, and where those compromises happening might lead to security issues. So this is really a delicate topic that will unfortunately continue to grow. We try to bypass this with software secure by design development like we do here. Now, there's another statement here. Unfortunately, even this is not mine. A well-managed environment is a secure environment, and this is kind of a nudge as to what we do at SolarWinds. Keep in mind, we are dealing with IT monitoring and observability. So we help customers to manage, organize their whole environment, the network, the applications, databases, etc., with one big system. In regards to today's topic, there's a couple of resources which you could download in case you are interested in more details. You could just go to solarwinds.com, scroll all the way to the bottom, and there you will find Secure by Design. And if you click on that, there's our resource center. There's a couple of videos, there's a couple of PDFs. The white paper, which you see here, is basically what I presented today in a couple of pages with more details, but it is a bit technical, so not everyone might be interested in this. There's a little bit of third-party integration too, like what we did and how we intend to use this in the future. And overall, we received enormously great feedback on the way we handled what happened here and in the way what we do for software development on a completely global scale. Okay, so that basically was my quick presentation, and I'm totally open to any kind of questions you might have. And I can also show you a little bit of product if you're interested in this.
Sascha, thank you so much for this presentation. It is great, sacrifice information from our customer, because it is great to introduce and presentate how the SolarWinds product developed, you know, because secure by development is really important now. So we are understanding this, and this is the reason that we invite for this session you and to explain this for our customer. Коллеги, эта часть была посвящена именно объяснению, да, и пояснению вам, как партнерам, как заказчикам, именно, ну, и раскрытие, в первую очередь, процесса безопасной разработки продуктов SolarWinds, которая сейчас внедрена у вендора. Это действительно важный процесс, и мы очень хотели это показать и пригласили для этого, собственно, Сашу, вот, чтобы именно показать вот эту святую святых вот этого процесса, чтобы раскрыть более подробно, вот, потому что, ну, причиной этого является то, что при интеграции вот решений по мониторингу, управлению инфраструктурой мы понимаем, что это такое решение интегрируется практически со всеми составляющими, и поэтому такое решение действительно должно быть безопасным, и процесс разработки должен, весь пайплайн в этом плане должен быть поставлен на поток. Ну, в принципе, то, что именно Саша очень красиво рассказал, я думаю, то есть в этом плане у SolarWinds действительно такой прагматичный, последовательный подход. Sasha, thank you so much one more time. So now we are talking about some question, and now could you please, maybe if you want to some add to this presentation on a side of some products, if you want to some presentate by your side in this direction, so please don't hesitate to, because so this session is like a, you know, first of all, accent of secure by design, and the second part, it is a quick introduction of a word of SolarWinds products, you know. So if you want to some add on the products, please share some, you know.
Okay, just one moment. I need a sip of water.
And after that, yeah, I share two key, you know, map of, я расшарю два слайда, где покажем еще раз напомним карту всех модулей для того, чтобы у вас составилась полная цельная картина.
Okay, so what I'm sharing with you today, oh, sorry, is there another question? No, there wasn't. Okay. I'm sharing with you our product called SolarWinds Hybrid Cloud Observability. And this is a bigger system which is used to observe whole IT environments. So basically all parts of it. I'm using a public system where everyone can go and click a little bit. So it's just for demo purpose. Okay. And it is a platform that could be deployed either on-prem or in a private cloud, but it's also available in Azure and in AWS. So it works in each kind of environment. Don't be concerned if the name of the product has cloud in it. It runs completely offline in an on-premise environment. There's no need to connect it to any kind of cloud. Don't worry about it. It's just a name. It's a modern name, you know, it has to have cloud somewhere. But we want to help organizations which maybe intend to go to the clouds in half a year, in 5 years, whatever. Maybe they use some forms of clouds already. So a system like this has to be able to talk to each part of the environment. And as I mentioned earlier, in most companies, most organizations, the reality is hybrid. Even if an organization does not want to use a platform as a service like Azure, for example, many do use software as a service, maybe like NetSuite, like Office 365, whatever. And those are, in fact, cloud applications, okay? So they are part of IT, and you need to be able to monitor their performance. You need to make sure it's healthy. because when something breaks in IT, the users usually notice this first, and they ring into IT and they complain, hey, I can no longer use my email, my voicemail doesn't work, my Cisco phone doesn't work, yada, yada. We all know those situations. We even know, hey, I forgot my password. That's the classic, right? So we have one tool here that would cover all of those individual elements. This one here is relative new. It is completely new code based on what I shared with you earlier, like the software secure by design principles. The idea behind it is a little bit older. We previously had something very similar in our portfolio, and instead of hybrid cloud observability, it was called the Orion platform, O-R-I-O-N, Orion. And it was a modular system. So what you see here on my screen, like network, NetFlow, etc., was an individual element. That was a little bit complicated for customers to understand what metrics have been provided by what module. So we made it easier, and it is now available in two sizes. One is called Essentials, and the other one is Advanced. What we see here is Advanced, and Essentials doesn't have all of those elements. So, for example, NetFlow, virtualization, those are not part of the Essential package. The difference is obviously in price, and it depends on the requirements of the company. But important is to understand that everything is available from one system. This is important because in many organizations, IT uses different tools for different parts of the infrastructure. So the network team might use specific tools for the network. The system administrators use different tools for the servers, whatever. And if you look at a typical IT team, you have those groups like the network group, the server admins, cloud architects, whatever. And when something breaks or when something is slow, the first question is not how to fix it, but who has to fix it. And everyone wants to make sure it's not my problem, okay? Talk to the other team. And this is a big problem in most organizations because time is being wasted. Everyone looks into their own tools and they don't talk to each other, so it's difficult to compare data. Here we have one tool which can be used by all individual IT teams. And there's a couple of features that point into the actual root cause of a problem. I don't know how technical my audience today is, but let me give you a very, very simple example. We have a feature here which is called quality of experience. And what we see here at the right-hand side is something very simple. We call it network response time, but what it actually is the so-called three-way TCP handshake. This basically shows us how long does it take for a connection between two elements to be established. It's very easy. Next to this, it's a little bit more complicated. This is called application response time, and here we use a technology called deep packet inspection to understand when the first bit of the actual data is being returned. As an example, let's say we have a random application on one side and a SQL server at another side. So the element here on the right-hand side would tell us how long does it take for my application to ask the SQL server, hey, are you there? Are you alive? The SQL server responds, yes, I can understand you. Can you understand me? And the application responds again, yes, I do hear you, right? So this is called the three-way TCP handshake. And in this very same scenario, the application response time would actually look when the query of the application arrives at the SQL server and how long does it for the SQL server to work on the query and reply with the actual response. So long story short, just from looking at those two elements, you get a very good idea if a problem is coming from the network layer or somewhere from the server and the application. And depending on where the problem is, we would then use different elements here in this bigger system. So, for example, if we experience a network issue, this one here is a really nice feature. It's called NetPath. Let me look for, we don't have my typical SQL example here. Okay. Let's assume we use Office 365 for a random application. It could be my SQL server, right? It doesn't matter if this is in the cloud or on-prem. And we have different locations, different offices that try to reach my application, Office 365 in this example. So here, oh, this is bad. Let me go one step back. This doesn't look nice. I'm pretty sure there's a nicer example. Let's take the broken one. Okay, so this one here looks okay. Here at the left-hand side, let me zoom in, is our application, the one which I just mentioned. Okay, and at the very right-hand side, in our example, is Office 365. Could be anything else. And this is the only two elements which you need to provide, the source and the destination. Everything else is what we discover and what lies in the path, in the way between the source and the destination. For the network technicians in the call, if there are any network technicians, you will probably say, okay, this looks like a visual trace route. It's nothing fancy. I'm sorry, this is not what it is. It is much more than a trace route. This is a TCP-based hop-by-hop analysis, which automatically discovers all kinds of information. So if we zoom in from our starting point, in my example here, we see like this, like a Cisco router. We get CPU information. You see this at the bottom. So we actively monitor this device, and it is our device. We have full access to it. We see a couple of IP addresses here, and these are so-called internal IP addresses, so they're not public. Okay, but here, in between these two nodes, we go from our internal environment into the public internet. So this is our internet service provider. In my example, this is a company called Charter Communications. It could be whatever, Vodafone, telecoms, whatever, right? And here's the number 4, which means if I click on it, there are 4 nodes and our data travels through these 4 nodes. In between the nodes, you always see the additional hop time, the milliseconds. How long does it take to go from here to here to here? Okay. Now, the problem here is we don't own these nodes. They are owned by our internet service provider. If there's a problem, the hop time would go up and we would point it out in red. But still, what can you do? You don't own the nodes. But if you click on it, we get information here on the right-hand side. It will tell us exactly who owns this node, what is it, and how can I reach out to this company. And this is very important because my next step would be to pick up the phone, ring this company and tell them, hey, there's a problem with your RTR97, whatever is it, right? They might not even know. And this is pretty cool because we really look into each single path. In this example, we even see a little bit of Microsoft's environment. Look here. So this is not a tool for espionage or so, right? We don't see much information here because this is a different environment. But these are elements which we discovered on the way to reach our destination. Currently, everything here is green and fine. But if you look at the bottom, we see the last 24 hours. And around 1 o'clock in the night, we had a bit of a problem here. So what we can do is we can travel back in time. I click into this and look at this now. You see 2 things. There's a bit of red and the whole path looks completely different. So there's 2 elements here. Let me zoom in. one problem was here on my ISP level. Okay, so they had a huge delay on this path, but they have redundant paths. So our data took another path here. They probably have some smart routing over there. So that wasn't too much of an impact, but it caused a bit of delay, which means the application was slower than usual. But that wasn't the only problem. There was something else right here. Oh, I need to zoom out a little bit. So it's too much to fit on my screen. I'm sorry. It's a lot of stuff happening here. So you see there's a lot of red at Microsoft. And let me tell you from experience, I know a little bit how Microsoft works over there. Keep in mind, this is Office 365. They use redundant containers, and occasionally it happens that a user hits a broken container. It's just standard. It happens all the time, and it usually doesn't have much of an impact. The traffic will just be rerouted to a live container. It's perfectly fine. It's normal. It happens. Here in our example, we actually have a container that worked, but we had 1, 2, 3 broken container, a really poor situation. So stuff works, but very, very slow. It took a long time to find Microsoft to find the right container. So as you can imagine, there are 2 problems here. One at our ISP, the other one at Microsoft. Guess who does not have a problem? We. Our own environment is still working fine, and that is the important message here. So even when stuff doesn't work, we know whose problem it is, who needs to fix it, and who is responsible. That is an important takeaway for this feature. So to be honest, I could go on for days and explain you how everything works. I just love the product. But let me just point out something else. Let's go to an application. So we noticed by experience that a tool like this will be used by jack of all trades, by IT generalists, by people who know a little bit of everything. They know how does a network work, how does a server work, they know a little bit how a cloud works, but they might not be experts in complex topics. For example, a database. A database can be a very complicated topic. So when there's something broken inside a database, we have a feature here which goes really into details how the database works, but we provide a lot of support. Oh, my system is a bit slow right now. This is great, right? You want to show something and then things don't work. Let's hope it's loading. I see my waiting message at the bottom. So when I wait for something in technology, I usually have like music in my mind, like in an elevator, you know, when the elevator goes upstairs very slow. It's so slow here. I'm so sorry. Let me try to refresh. Oh, here we go. Here we go. It took a little time. So what we see here is the result of maybe 4 mouse clicks. So we just need to talk to the SQL server, and everything else we pull automatically from the system. Besides those 4 mouse clicks, there's no user interaction required, and we pull hundreds of different metrics, because the user who uses this tool might not know what is important for a SQL server, but we do, because this is our business. So there's a lot of stuff going on here, but if there's a problem with the SQL server, you just follow the red elements, red information. And right here, I see that some databases, 2 databases have a problem, search service. So this is a SharePoint. So there's a SharePoint database, and the search service is a little bit slow. Logging is a little bit slow. Let's scroll down. Cache is fine. No logs. Logs is basically when data is written and read at the same time. So this could cause an issue. Everything else looks okay. Work files a little bit out of scope, but not too crazy. So we can probably safely assume that the SQL server itself is running fine, but we have trouble in 2 databases. So we would open this. and we just drill down into the database. And I don't want to go too far here really, but the idea is you just follow the red information, and when we click on an individual matrix, we will show exactly what is happening there, why is it happening, and what can we do to prevent it. Because, as I mentioned, the person who is using this tool right now might not be a database administrator. So, for example, if we is there anything red here? No, whatever. So let's assume we wouldn't know what is log flush wait time, and this might be red. So we could just click on this, and we will now get a lot of information. And the information, sorry, it's really slow. The information, depending on what it is, well, I clicked on log flush. I don't expect much. It's not a complicated topic, but we show where we take this information from, and we want to give the user a way to decide if they can fix it, or in this example, if they have to ring a database administrator to fix the issue. It's really a bit slow right now. I'm so sorry for that. There's a lot more what we could do. So let me give you a quick tour. So this part here talks to network devices, or let's say talks to any device that has an IP address. And we use different technologies to do so. So the most simple one, oh, I see an error message, top right corner. Okay, it's busy. Okay. The most simple element is, SNMP. Okay, so wait, let me quickly restart this. The most simple technology would be SNMP. And SNMP is a very old protocol that provides a lot of information, but if we talk about modern hardware, we don't get that much information via SNMP anymore. So, for example, if you talk to a Palo Alto firewall or a Cisco Nexus device, those hardware can provide so much more information than what's available via SNMP. Yeah, let me restart this. And for those, we use actually an API. So we use Palo Alto's API or Cisco's API to talk to the software. There seems to be a problem at our demo website. I'm so sorry. Oh, there we go again. There we go. So we use different technologies to talk to the vendors. When we look into applications, what we just had here, in application management, the standard technologies would be, for example, SSH on a Linux base or WMI on a Windows base. But even here, APIs are getting more and more important. If you want to monitor Office 365, for example, you need PowerShell. Okay, so we have PowerShell and Office 365 built into the product. If you want to monitor clouds, just as an idea, we can do this too. So for Azure, we use PowerShell 2. For Amazon, for AWS, we use, I forgot what it's called, CloudWatch is what it's called. It's their API. Lots of API usage here in the system. NetFlow is a protocol to analyze data flow in networks. There's different names like NetFlow, IPFlix, RFlow, JFlow, etc., etc. They basically provide information about what exactly happens in the network and who talks to whom. Network configuration is very, very important and powerful. In network management, most problems are caused by user errors. Someone did a configuration mistake, or maybe an unauthorized change got applied, or a plan was made for a change, but the consequences didn't really work out as expected. It happens, okay? So with the network configuration part, we could roll back any change. We also have change management, so we could see when something changed and by whom, so what user logged into a switch and applied a change. And the most important feature here, we can use templates for automating changes on network devices. This is really, really cool feature. So log management is part of the bundle. So when we use SNMP or W&I, what we do is each couple of minutes, we ask for specific information from the devices. But what is when something happens in between? You need real-time information. And usually logs do provide this information. Network devices and servers usually can send the logs automatically somewhere. With applications, it's a bit difficult. So we would use an agent to retrieve logs from an application. Application we just talked, server configuration is very similar to network, so we can see changes, we can create baselines, etc. Databases. Now we have seen the SQL, I've explained the SQL server, and this one here is called Database Performance Analyzer. It goes a little bit deeper into databases. It's measuring something which is called wait time. The wait time is something very normal. So you create a query and send it to a database, and the database needs to think about this query. We only talk about milliseconds here, okay? It's not like it takes ages, but depending on where those milliseconds are being added. And keep in mind, a query might be sent 20,000 times a day. So the wait time sums up, and depending on where it's added, we get a very good idea if the resources aren't fine, if there's maybe the query isn't correctly written, or we suggest that maybe there's too many full table scans, so we suggest to create an index, etc., etc. So this goes very deep into databases, and it's usually the tool of choice for developers because they can see code, the impact of code changes in real time, and for database administrators. Virtualization goes into the, as the name suggests, into the virtualization layer, and we are compatible with Hyper-V, VMware, and Nutanix. Okay. Storage talks to all your big storage devices like HP, Nutanix again, etc. It's a little bit complicated because as opposed to the network, there's no really unified protocol in storage. Well, there is one, it's called SMIS, but not each vendor listens to this. It's very difficult. So we really need to adjust our product for each single storage array out there. And we support, I don't know, 100 different storage arrays. And it will give you performance, capacity, health data, and you can plan ahead. Web Performance Monitor is a synthetic user experience. So you could record certain steps, maybe log into NetSuite or whatever, or Salesforce, and play this from various locations to see how long does it take to work on these elements. VoIP and Network Quality Manager is, as the name suggests, talking to your VoIP infrastructure. It's compatible with Cisco and Avaya, so this is 95% of the market, and drills down into the cubes, into the boxes, the voice routers, all the way into the telephones. Patch Manager is like third-party patching for Windows systems, for stuff like Adobe Reader, etc. So we package it and help you deploying it. IP Address Manager is like a DDI solution. So we talk and monitor the layer 3 address space, including management of DHCP and DNS. And here we're compatible with Windows, Linux, and Cisco. The device tracker is the little brother of the IPAM. So IP Address Manager is layer 3. Device tracker is layer 2. So we show what vendors are in my network and where is the device connected. So layer 2 maps. Typical scenario, someone from accounting writes a ticket, like I can't access the resource. And in IT, you have no idea where does this guy sit. So you could just enter the user information, the computer information, whatever, and this tool will tell you the person is connected and switch 17 on port 5, whatever. Security is an integration into 2 of our security tools. Now, those are external tools, but they integrate into the platform, and we deal with a theme and with access rights information. Now, how does it all work together? There's two ways, okay? One of them is this one here, environment. We will, in a few seconds, see an information here with a lot of small bubbles. It looks complicated when you see it for the first time, but actually this is a perfectly normal IT environment. Here's my applications, here's databases, servers, a lot of stuff here, disks like volumes, here's shared storage, etc., etc. Now, when something breaks, it is usually an application. We notice an application doesn't respond. What to do now? We click on an application and the system will now gray out what is not relevant to me. This is an improvement, but we can do one step more. Top right corner, I have an element called Spotlight. If I click this, I will get the super clean interface and it will only show me what is relevant to the application. My application here, by the way, is an IIS, a web server, okay? And we see there's a couple of depending applications. There's a couple of depending servers, hosts, so I know that I'm virtualizing. I get vCenter information, so I know that I'm using VMware already. And I see a storage array, so there's shared storage involved too. Problems are here in the servers and in the application itself. So I can rule out a lot of possible problems. Most likely my problem sits in my application, so I could click this again and the system will seamlessly move me to application monitoring, and this will look similar to the SQL server, you remember? It is the same concept, and I just focus on red elements. Actually, I see already my web page has a bit of a problem here, okay? So I could further drill down here, but it's super easy to use. You don't know exactly where is the root cause, so you just click on elements. And what we saw a moment ago, this one here, is fully automated. If there's a change in the environment, so for example, we saw that VMware was involved. There's a feature called vMotion that moves VMs from one host to another. We don't need manual interaction. We know when stuff like that happens. So it's always up to date and always dynamic. But sometimes when you are in IT for many, many years, you have a very good idea when certain elements don't really work that well with each other, but you need to prove it. How can you prove this if there's no visible relationship between those elements? We have a different feature for that. It's called performance analysis. And here, a user can create their own correlation. And this is an extremely powerful tool. In SolarWinds Hybrid Cloud Observability, we can probably collect hundreds of thousands of different key performance elements. Here we have just some information coming from one node. It's like a SQL node, and here's some information that we pick from this one. Let me add something else. When I click Add Entities, I can get each element in our system. So right now in my system here, I have 219 different nodes. I can use whatever information I'm interested in. To make it simple, let me click into two different nodes. Now here, 3 nodes, okay? And if I click here, I will see everything that's coming from this node. Here, I will see what's coming from this node. I have a couple of icons here. When I click this, it will show me everything that is somehow connected, somehow relevant for this node. Now it gets a little bit more information. What do I do with this stuff? I could just pick something and create my own correlation. So I can pick something from here. My system is a bit slow again. There's too many users, so maybe they just changed something right now in the US. That happens, unfortunately. So it's drag and drop based, okay? I can always create my own charts or pick something and throw it into an existing chart. What I do here right now doesn't make any sense. I just want you to understand the system. I can pick any information from anything the SolarWinds system collects and look how it worked over time. I can change the time period. Maybe I want to see what happened last Saturday, whatever, right? So it will show this to me. This is a very, very strong feature. I could just save this. I could share this with a colleague, so it would create me a link. I can throw this into Teams or Slack or whatever. And I can even use the information here as part of what I would like to see on my dashboard. And this is the last thing I want to tell you. Those dashboards here are highly configurable. So you just click the pen icon and add your widgets. There's a couple of 100 different widgets that come with the system. It's just drag and drop. Okay. I can't show you here in the online demo, but I can add any information. I can do custom queries. I can do iframes of other applications. You might notice by my accent, I'm from Germany. I was once talking to a customer in Germany who has the Bundesliga, the football, in a frame here, so they can watch this from the server room. Don't ask me, whatever. So you can configure this in any kind of way you're interested in. It is super interactive, and we also have a different kind of dashboards here. So here we could bring in information and use really complex queries. What we do here is, so for example, in an average system, we collect all those hundreds, thousands of different applications of CPU utilization, uplink utilization, whatever. But what does it mean for my organization? If my organization is a hotel, I am probably interested in how many rooms are being booked per day or per hour or whatever. So what we could potentially do here is create an interesting query and put this information together so that we can drill down. If this one here would be how many rooms are booked, okay, we could drill down and we could see the possible impact on the booking system, on other information that comes from our dashboards. So this is really, really nice. We call those modern dashboards, and they will be used more and more in the system, but you can always create your own. So network configuration, for example, has one of those new dashboards already. So they're not that new anymore. We still call them new dashboards, but they will be long-term and all over the product. Okay, I think I've seen a couple of chat questions.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, Sascha, please, because we had a question from the Taras Zaluzhny regarding products roadmap. Taras Zaluzhny is our great partner. He has a SolarWinds certification, and I really thanks to Taras Zaluzhny for joining to this session. So, Sascha, please, if you want, if you can, to provide some comments regarding roadmap.
Regarding the roadmap?
Yes.
Okay, so you can always see some of the roadmap if you go to twag.com. Okay, this is our public forum, and if you then go into any element, we would see what we're working on here usually. I should see it. I don't see it right now, but usually we see, we call this what we are working on, and we usually provide information what might happen in the future with different products. So right now, here we just added new features last month, I think, or maybe 6 weeks ago. And the latest updates were a little bit more for SD1. So customers wanted a more deeper SD1 integration. So we added stuff for Merakis and Velo Cloud and some other things. And we continue to do this. Another topic we are working on this year, and actually right now, is a tighter integration between the platform, which we see here, and our ITSM solution, the SolarWinds Service Desk. There is already an integration, but we would like to make it a little bit more easy for customers who are using both. So this is kind of things which we're working on right now. So there were a couple more questions, I think, right? So here's my chat, product roadmap, okay.
Regarding using Vman for Proxmox.
Oh, for Proxmox, no. Proxmox, it comes up occasionally, but I'll be honest with you, there are no plans to use to integrate Proxmox. But Proxmox is based on Debian, so it is not a big problem to use a feature which we have here in the product. It's called API poller. So you could create your own API polling elements and retrieve the information from the underlying Linux system. And Proxmox has an API themselves. So there's no out-of-the-box integration, but you can make it work. So that definitely works out. Then I see a question about the Oracle databases similar to App Insight for SQL. That is also a request which comes up occasionally. I would say we need more feedback on this so to make it work. So we have support for Oracle databases in SAM with the template, but obviously the template does not provide the same information like App Insight. So this would be something nice, but it's something that is not a priority right now. Our administrators who look into oracles usually use the database performance analyzer, the DPA tool, to get information for that.
Yeah, got it. So another one question was on a possible to combine modern dashboards and classic ones on one view.
Yeah, so you could potentially the elements which are used in the modern dashboards, you can save them and you could use some of them in the classic dashboards. That is at least what we want to do. It's kind of like a migration path to give customers the best of both worlds. So you need to save individual elements. You could also use the elements coming from NetPar, from performance analysis, and add them to the traditional dashboards. So there are some ways to do this.
Sascha, thank you one more time for your speech, for your demo, for your unique information, regarding demo, regarding approach of secure by design in SolarWinds. We really appreciate to hear from you this information. We are really happy that you joined to this session. So, and the next step, I propose to share 2 slides regarding SolarWinds product. So, what I do now. Коллеги, я расшариваю буквально еще на 2 слайда, заберу ваше внимание по продуктам для того, чтобы сориентировать вас по тому, что есть, или напомнить, что есть на данный момент в портфеле SolarWinds как вендора. Как уже сказал, то есть это вендор мирового масштаба, это лидер в направлении мониторинга и управления инфраструктурой. Число клиентов 500 из Fortune 500 само говорит за себя, поэтому тут можно не останавливаться. А вот подбивая итоги сегодняшней сессии с Сашей, вот, хотелось бы сказать, что в данном направлении, данное направление, относительно которого работаем с SolarWinds, является одной из основных составляющих на данный момент в направлении цифровой трансформации и улучшения IT-процессов, которые есть в каждой организации на каждый день. То есть это в любом случае задачи, связанные с администрированием, улучшением работы сервисов, систем, сети, сетевого оборудования, ну и, собственно, получение от этого выгоды в плане ускорения работы и, соответственно, получения прямого ROI от решения. Ну и вот если говорить про то, что у нас есть сейчас в SolarWinds платформе, то есть это в первую очередь модули, которые вот Саша показывал, это модули по направлению, связанные с мониторингом управления сетью, системами, сервисами, приложениями, отдельно базы данных. Мы чуть-чуть буквально сделали референс на security направление. Вот, то есть тут, если можно, если у вас будет время, то есть мы всегда рады чуть больше этому уделить внимание, этим модулям, ну и application. Также немножко сказали про направление ITSM, про Service Desk. Это тоже модули, которые есть в SolarWinds и которые эффективно используются заказчиками. Ну и основа, на которой все это стоит, это Secure by Design. Это основная тема нашего сегодняшнего вебинара, которая была вот на повестке, собственно, сегодня. Вот. Ну, это такая небольшая такой summary по нашему сегодняшнему вебинару. Вот, для того, чтобы вам немножко тоже так подсветить, еще раз покажу. Вот карта вендора, где вот по каждому из направлений, про которому проговорил, отмечены отдельные квадратиками модули. Видно, что их много. Мы сейчас вот не будем на них отдельно останавливаться, на каждом отдельно. Мы с Сашей вот проговорили по отдельным на демо. Ну, тут стоит отметить, что вот там, по направлению управления приложениями у нас есть Web Performance Monitor, еще раз, Server Application Monitor, как два очень мощных модуля в этом направлении. По Database направлению это Database Performance Analyzer, как тоже один из core модулей в этом направлении. Есть также и другие смежные модули, это Database Performance Monitor и также другие облачные модули. Ну, то есть тут видно на карте, что есть, собственно, on-prem слева, вот, и как модули в плане сервиса, ну, то есть SaaS. По infrastructure направлению, то есть это тоже связано с Server Application Monitor, то, что вот говорили, Саша показывал. Вот здесь также Storage Resource Monitor, это по направлению мониторинга системами хранения данных, Log Analyzer, то есть тут коротко тоже проговорили, Virtualization Manager, соответственно, направление виртуализации, ну и вот направление сети, то есть тут уже не буду повторяться, соответственно, Network Performance Monitor, Network Traffic Analyzer и другие, ну и Security тоже. Тут основные модули, это те, которые вот отмечены зеленым, это Access Right Manager, управление правами доступа, мониторинг учетных записей, Security Event Manager – это, соответственно, система CM, при этом тут функционал немножко такой, можно сказать, более заточен именно в сторону использования данной системы, данного модуля в связке с модулями другими от этой платформы. Ну и также есть вот сервис менеджмент, ITSM направление, где эффективно мы также предлагаем тикет-системы, Web Help Desk в on-premise варианте и Service Desk в SaaS. Ну и, соответственно, DMVAR, я думаю, тоже многие, кто помнят, это удаленное подключение для решения уже проблем. Ну вот вкратце карта модулей. Есть также еще для удобства использования продуктов, связки, бандл, то, что вот в принципе сразу в начале демо упомянул Саша, то есть когда мы заходим в консоль, сразу написано Observability, это новый подход в SolarWinds в объединении модулей для комплексного уже мониторинга, более углубленного, для получения информации с нескольких источников. И этот бандл, он коммерчески выгоден как для партнеров, так и для заказчиков, потому что лицензирование унифицированное. То есть здесь мы считаем количество нод, и далее уже модули, которые вы видите отмечены отдельно в Essential Bundle и в Advanced, они, в принципе, связываются в единую подписку. Вот такая система более простая. Ну и завершая, в принципе, тоже нужно сказать, что еще раз SolarWinds — это большая вселенная. То есть тут отдельно по работе с заказчиками существует и Customer портал, Success Center для того, и тут сразу стоит отметить ТВАК, форум, где постоянно обсуждаются технические вопросы. На этом форуме активных пользователей и, в общем-то, в комьюнити SolarWinds насчитывает более 200 тысяч активных пользователей. Ну и также есть отдельно обучающие порталы, это SolarWinds Academy, вот, где можно и получить, соответственно, сертификацию SolarWinds. Она на данный момент является, оценивается наряду с сертификацией Cisco и другими топовыми вендорами по направлению работы с сетями. То есть это действительно вендор, с которым, во-первых, мы работаем уже давно и успешно. У нас, как у дистрибьютора, много реализованных проектов в разных направлениях. Готовы поделиться опытом, провести и совместные демо, ликбезы, уточнения дополнительные. То есть всегда рады обратной связи. То есть тут благодаря такой близкой поддержке и вендора мы стараемся решать и быстро и проблемы, и уточнять информацию для того, чтобы заказчикам было понятно и просто использовать продукты SolarWinds. Ну и в данном случае мы пригласили Сашу для того, чтобы осветить вам более глубоко весь процесс, в первую очередь, разработки и посвящения в подход их, который они применяют Secure by Design в своих продуктах. Вот. Ну, по вопросам, если есть еще какие-то, пожалуйста, задавайте, либо после сессии. Вот. Отдельно еще раз хочу спасибо сказать не только вам, партнерам, заказчикам, которые пришли на данную сессию, но и команде маркетинга, потому что в коллаборации с ними получилась такая очень, на наш взгляд, на мой взгляд, продуктивная, комплексная, общеобразовательная и в первую очередь относительно SolarWinds и продуктивная относительно рассмотрения технической стороны, в частности, в точности, с Сашей Гисом, который, еще раз скажу, является одним из главных технических специалистов по направлению у SolarWinds в нашем регионе. Еще раз спасибо всем за внимание. Всегда еще раз рады любым вашим вопросам, обращениям. Будем на связи. И тогда всем хорошего дня. Саша, thank you so much one more time. Have a nice day to all and keep in touch.
Thanks for joining, guys. And it is Thursday. We are almost at the weekend. Goodbye.